What is going on, YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review another holiday review for the 2023 albums that I've been doing. And basically, this album is called Whitsitt Chapel by Jelly Roll, and it came out in the late spring of 2023. So this is one like I've been really enjoying like recent Jelly Roll as far as that's kind of happened. He's one of the ones that has a lot of blossoming power that's really been around lately, and he's had some hits. I feel like his 2020 album and then his 2021 album Ballads of the Broken were some good ones. Jelly Roll had a 2020 album called Self Medicated that had some singing hits on there, and then he had a 2021 album that came out that was called Ballads of the Broken, which I reviewed last year. So that was a pretty damn good one. I definitely like the kind of breakout appeal that Jelly Roll has kind of had and stuff. And this is like the follow up to after he broke out in like 2020, 2021 and such. So this is definitely one. This is like a full blown country album. He doesn't really rap on this particular album, but this fold fits pretty damn well, I would have to say, for Jelly Roll. It's just a good example of getting some stuff here, and he embraces like the full blown singing as far as that kind of happens. But it's affable just because his personality was already kind of southern as far as that kind of went. He did do a lot of his hooks just in the singing. But the last time I checked in with Jelly Roll was when I reviewed back in July the Whiskey, Weed, and Waffle House Project, which is a mixtape that I do recommend. That's vintage. That's definitely kind of vintage Jelly Roll that I would recommend checking out. And I've reviewed a few other ones. There's a Jelly Roll playlist that you can check out that has some more in there. But this is probably one of the more charming releases that I've seen thus far with 2023. I would have to say. It's not to say that everything off this year was kind of bunk, but this is definitely one that had some blossoming kind of appeal. And I like the fact that Jelly Roll fits as well as he does with country music. I just would have to say this is a pretty good, charming project. This has a lot of personality. So it's a pretty strengthy one to kind of have. Now, the thing about this particular album is it does have a lot of religious undertones, like with this particular project, more so than like typical kind of Jelly Roll. This does have like a lot of religious undertones, more so than with typical kind of Jelly Roll as far as that kind of happens. But I think it kind of has that commercial kind of appeal about it. Just someone who's kind of a more malaise country artist. If you were to take like a typical kind of country artist and then just pump some kind of southern kind of religious undertones into it and that type of stuff, you'd pretty much have an album here as far as that kind of happens. It's not to say I think this personality is pretty suiting for Jelly Roll as far as it kind of happens, but the kind of the rougher kind of rock rap edge that he kind of had on Ballads of the Broken is really not here in abundance. There are a few kind of up tempo songs, but a lot of this is just sprawling, is kind of countryside. A lot of this is just sprawling, kind of countryside, stargazing, summer gazing type tunes as far as that kind of happens. But he's a little bit more introspective than Jason Aldean. I reviewed Jason Aldean's 2023 album recently, and that's a pretty stellar one. That one's probably the better one, but this one has a lot more personality. I just would say Jelly Roll just has a charming character as far as he admits that he still kind of gets drunk and buzzed and that type of stuff and smokes and some of those type things and has an affable time just going out and having a nightlife where he's not quite as, I mean, I do feel like he's somewhat weathered with this particular project as far as doing it. He has a little bit of remorse and regret, but he kind of has that religious undertone as far as atoning for it. But I look after it, he at least still kind of continues to do it. It's the same thing that I liked with like Ballads of the Broken. It's just the fact that Jelly Roll continues to have like a charming personality and just kind of has like some of that edge still. He hasn't softened. So I just look after this album. If you think like with Jelly Roll going commercial and with him kind of being on like Good Morning America and morning television and things like that, just kind of been the more morning and kind of brunch comedy as far as that kind of happened. I almost question if Jelly Roll was going with this particular album was going to sell out and kind of be just a lot more taciturn and just kind of more affable, just in like the blunted edge as far as that kind of happened. But that didn't happen. I mean, he has like there are some tunes on here. I think the religious undertone of it kind of backs up the prospect of just him kind of being somewhat more presentable. But I just think this is kind of what you get with like a commercial kind of Jelly Roll, because this is basically like his breakout album. I would have to say this is him like in the sheer spotlight and limelight as far as that kind of goes. The two singles that he dropped were top 20 singles, which is something Jelly Roll I would say up to this point has never really done. I mean, maybe Dead Man Walking from 2021 did decently, and there was like another country song that came off of Ballads of the Broken that was another one like that. But I would have to say these are like the true crest of Jelly Roll's popularity. But I would have to say hopefully that continues. But we'll go ahead and get to the singles. So basically the first single is Need a Favor, and this is a pretty nice boppish kind of one. This is kind of like a country fried version of like the this is kind of like a country fried version of Dead Man Walking, where Dead Man Walking from his 2021 album was a lot more rock rap, kind of with the edgy kind of rock tinge about it. This one's kind of a lot more malaise country type feel. So this is kind of a malaise, kind of dusky autumn tune. I would have to say it's just a great makeshift country pair of music, I would have to say. and it's marketable, and it's just a marketable kind of lasting single. I'd have to say this one has a pretty catchy chorus. This has a pretty catchy chorus, and this has a religious undertone about it, which some of the songs on this album kind of do. But I do look at the aspect of it that it just carries it pretty well. It's just kind of like DMX or folks like that, or Afro Man, some of those type folks, or just kind of like DMX or Afro Man or NF or some of those type folks that do have some of those religious kind of aspects about it. It's just interesting that Jelly Roll kind of has that aspect, but just being able to pull it off and make like a pretty, like I would almost say that this could be like rock radio type feel, just if it were a little bit more edgy, but it definitely kind of has like just the 4:30, 5:30 sunset skies kind of appeal about it, just in like a makeshift sense as far as winding down. So that's a good one. But then the second single, the second single is Save Me, and this is another highlight on here. This one's kind of more of a simmering kind of song. This one's definitely more summer ready than Need a Favor, where that one was more autumn. But Save Me is kind of a simmering, kind of radio ready country blaze of a song. I would have to say it's a good personal cut, and it just has a catchy atmosphere about it. And it's just overall some nice, it has a pretty nice glazed beat. So this is one, kind of has like a country songstress on here, which her name is Lainey Wilson. I haven't heard of her, but she did pretty good with this particular song. Haven't heard of Lainey Wilson, but she did pretty good with this particular song. So this one's just a lot more. This is kind of like a typical kind of country tune as far as that kind of happens. Just Save Me is just kind of a typical kind of country tune as far as just being like a summer blaze type tune, just for like simmering kind of late August, early September type fare. Just one that kind of resonates in the skies as far as that kind of goes. Just great for like 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock p.m. type stuff, just for kind of relatively winding down, but not quite in full-blown wind down mode. This one's not quite as much malaise as like Need a Favor is, but this one is just kind of where you still have some energy for the day as far as that's kind of concerned. Maybe the tasks are not wholesomely over, but just kind of in between, like not midday, like noon or 1, but also not like 5 or 6 p.m. Just somewhere in like the mid-late day kind of hours as far as this, like some good summer fun. But it's just pretty malaise about, I mean, it's not malaise. It just kind of has that hazy kind of relative anguish, but still has like a decent degree of just like pep about it. This kind of like it, the kind of ruminating that Jelly Roll kind of does is just kind of the anguish kind of like this kind of like Tech Nine type fare, where it just kind of has like the Eminem and Tech Nine type fare that just has that anguish about it, and just kind of more stargazing, just kind of in like a moody kind of sense. That's what Jelly Roll does, just in like a country kind of commercial type singles. That works pretty well to kind of get some of that like Hobson and Tech Nine and Eminem and NF and some of those type folks ruminating just within like a radio single sense. So it's good to kind of get that sort of ruminating, but it just works. It's a real kind of vulnerable kind of song, I'd have to say. So there's 13 songs on this particular album, and out of those 13 songs, I wound up recommending 8. So I'll go ahead and recommend those 8 songs. So those 8 songs would be Need a Favor, Dancing with the Devil, She, Behind Bars, Unlive, or Unlive, Save Me, Halfway to Hell, and The Lost. So to talk about some of these, like, there's a few particular up-tempo songs that have a lot of good blaze appeal about them, and one in particular is Halfway to Hell. This is a great way to kick off the album. This is just a nice outing song. This is a great outing song for having like a rowdy and riveting time, I would have to say. It's just kind of hazy and musky about it. I would feel like this is some of that kind of country haze and country musk as far as that kind of goes, and it's just got some vivid charm. So this is definitely one. This just feels like something that Jason Aldean or someone like that would kind of do, those type folks. Trying to think of some other ones like Florida Georgia Line, just in a more riveting kind of country bar, kind of karaoke bar, something like that. Just a pub crawl southern bar, something like that, as far as that kind of goes. Just kind of one for like a riveting one. I definitely like Jelly Roll getting some of these country bar type tunes because they work pretty well. He's just a great pairing for that sort of thing, but there's just not a ton of songs like that on here. I feel like apart from Halfway to Hell, the only other one like that is just The Lost. So to talk about The Lost, this is another nice one. This is kind of a good pairing with Halfway to Hell. Like I was saying, this is a good one for that. Just kind of a solid igniting outing song, I would have to say, and it's just another hit jive track. So this one's a little bit more mellow than Halfway to Hell, but they're both pretty good ones to kind of have for just like a night out and something like that. Where Jelly Roll, for the most part, is pretty malaise on this particular album. His ruminating is just off the scale, and this Jelly Roll's ruminating is basically off the scale on this particular album. He just really nails that pretty well. He has a lot of character just with like his introspectiveness as far as that kind of goes. But when you're looking for something a little bit more rowdy and just kind of for more like today type fare, just for getting a few drinks and some of that type of stuff, as far as stepping out, these 2 songs, Halfway to Hell and The Lost, are some good ones for kind of doing that. So this is kind of the concept about it. They both work pretty well. Kind of a good song for your buds as far as like a hangout tune, just in that sort of sense, which there's not a ton of songs like that on this particular album, is Behind Bars. And this song has Struggle Jennings on there, which is an old favorite. an old kind of collabo buddy with Jelly Roll as far as that kind of happens. I want to say he was on like his 2020 album and a few further back ones than that. He definitely had some good songs with him. And then Brantley Gilbert, who's a country singer, is on here also. This is just an overall nice one. This is just kind of a hazy, kind of out and about late summer blaze. I would have to say it's a good beer swilling tune. Definitely, it's just a good kick. This is a good kickback kind of hangout bop, I would have to say. So this is just a nice one. Just another malaise kind of one. I would probably pair this one up. This one's just a little bit more uptown kind of feel. This one's just kind of a more uptown kind of rundown country type scaping type tune as far as that kind of happens. Just a good kind of hangout, just in like a more malaise kind of atmosphere, I would have to say. It's just a nice one to kind of have, but it's not really as much of a stepping out type tune as much as just kind of having some beers with your buds and that type of stuff. Just kind of more malaise kind of hang out, just the simmering kind of summer skies and just kind of 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock p.m. Just kind of some of the summer skies just reconciling with some of your buds at 4:30, 5:30 p.m.s and stuff like that. Another good summer one. So there are some summer ones on here, but probably one of the best songs on the album I would definitely have to say is She. This is just a very gloomy kind of album cut with like an effectual glaze about it, and it has a resonant personality, definitely I would have to say. This is just some great production work, and it's just a very affable song. This one kind of talks about a song about a chick who's kind of going through some problems and getting progressively worse. But I do like this is just a powerful kind of storytelling song. She is just a powerful kind of storytelling song that just hits the nail on the head extremely well. This one just has the perfect malaise type feel, and this is really kind of a wrenching song that just works pretty damn well. So this is a personal one that just hits the nail, definitely. Another kind of highlight on this album is Dancing with the Devil. This is kind of a sullen countryside haze of a song, I would have to say. It's just a good reflective tune, and it's a hit example of down-tempo country. So this is just kind of one of those kind of countryside simmering type tunes that Jason Aldean does pretty well. Just kind of stargazing and that type of stuff. Just a real kind of summery type one. Just has that hazy kind of 5:30, 6:30 p.m. type stuff as far as that kind of happens. Jelly Roll's getting pretty good at doing some of these, I'd have to say. I think this is like, I mean, he has kind of had like a country personality, but this is one where it kind of full blown embraces it. And this just kind of feels like he's been doing country albums for years as far as that kind of happens. But this is just an example of like a soul in one. It's kind of typical kind of stargazing, summer gazing as far as that kind of happens. It's great for late day makeshift as far as that kind of happens. Just kind of a good kind of beer swilling type tune as far as that kind of goes. Just a good malaise kind of one. So some of these, like I feel like Need a Favor, Dancing with the Devil. I feel like two late day makeshift kind of after hours tunes I would have to say would be Need a Favor and Dancing with the Devil. Now there are some other ones where She can kind of almost be like that. And then I would also say that Save Me is kind of another one that's kind of in that vernacular, but kind of a good song on here that's a pretty nice one that kind of has a good malaise, just a dusky kind of commerce feel about it is Unlived. So this is kind of like a good kind of dusky commerce for winding down makeshift, I would have to say. It's a good country rap tune for the after hours kickback, definitely. Yelawolf has a pretty good feature on here. He's the only real rapper on this particular project, but he just does a good job on this one. This is like Yelawolf off of his Love Story days from 2015, so he's obviously a pretty good country rapper. He doesn't really do country singing like a full-blown country album, but he does do some of that country stuff, just in case you didn't know or something like that. But I just would have to say this is a good example. This one's kind of a mid-tempo song. Like this one's not quite as gazing as like Need a Favor, or this one's not quite as gazing as Save Me or Dancing with the Devil or some of those type ones, but it's just kind of like a peppy kind of country rap type tune that just works pretty well. This has that malaise about it, just some dusky commerce. There's a lot of good sunset songs on this particular album. This is definitely kind of like a late August, September type tune. Some of this is not really bright, like May, June, July type summer as far as it's not really like the May, June, July kind of bright summer, just kind of country bar and like karaoke bar and nightclub kind of affairs as far as that kind of happens. But there's just like a lot of malaise as far as just like tailgating and just countryside gazing as far as that kind of happens. There's just some good ones for that as far as this album kind of goes. So I definitely like the appeal of that. Definitely kind of similar to Jason Aldean and folks like that, Florida Georgia Line and some of them, I'd have to say. But yeah, that basically takes care of the album. So to talk about some of the songs I didn't enjoy, the 5 songs I didn't enjoy and don't recommend as much, which would be Church, Nail Me, Hold On Me, Kill a Man, and then Hungover in a Church Pew. I would have to say most of these are just kind of more kind of peppy and just kind of more lighthearted, just kind of more homely country kind of pep about them that just don't really have the engaging type feel about them. These are just a little bit ones that just have a little bit more bounce to them that just doesn't have like the affable type tune as far as that kind of happens. Like I kind of feel like the switch between it just having like 2 shades as far as like having some of these somber ones and then having some of these more peppy or just kind of more wholesome ones. I feel like the personality behind these just didn't quite shine through enough, or I kind of feel like it just didn't have like the edge as far as what was probably necessary. I feel like some of these peppier ones just didn't quite have the edge as far as what was probably necessary. So these are just some ones. The middle of the album just kind of has like a kind of snag as far as that kind of happens just with the affability behind some of these. But it's just kind of the concept. Some of these just have a lot more atoning factors and a little bit more kind of thoughts to kind of write home about, and just kind of more just in like a more personable kind of just like really kind of atoning and really regret and just kind of more whole this whole factor just bridging type feels about them. So I just would say those didn't quite connect as much. So I just would have to say me recommending 8 songs out of 13 on this particular album. I'm going to go ahead and give this album like a 7.5 out of 10. Definitely one of the better albums I've heard out of 2023. I feel like Jelly Roll has a ton of personality, and definitely he has this ruminating down pretty pat. He has tons of like songwriting and just the ability to kind of have some affable kind of melodies and stuff like that just to kind of get you engaged and listen. He's definitely one of the more compelling characters that's blossomed out of 2023. I just think that some of like the more optimistic type tunes and kind of the more atoning factor means when the religious undertones kind of get more to deal with, they're just kind of not as enjoyable. So that's just kind of thing about it. But for the most part, I would say at least 75% of the album has like sheer kind of just malaise type tunes. It's great for like a makeshift kind of after hour kind of malaise as far as that kind of happens in just beer swilling and just like some country bars and just karaoke places, things like that, just to kind of have just in like a good sense. That's pretty good. But in terms of the social score, I'm going to go ahead and give the social score of this album like an 8.25. I feel like it has enough affable tunes on here. Most of his personality is pretty engaging, but there is the religious undertone. So if you don't have like the sheer connection with that sort of engagement factor as far as that kind of happens, it may lose some of its bite and engagement. But I just would have to say for the most part, it does have like the atmosphere just being really compelling and just having some good tunes for just like a good sense of nightlife in like a certain sense. I mean, it's kind of in just day life too, just standard day commerce, night commerce as far as that kind of happens. Jelly Roll has the personality. It's just kind of the fact that this album kind of has like a religious kind of southern theme about it this time, which is just kind of the thing. But this would have to say for the most part, that's extremely engaging. So that's just kind of the thing about it. But in terms of the future, like this is Jelly Roll's most recent album. This just came out in the spring of 2023, so this is the most recent one. But there's a bunch more Jelly Roll albums I want to get to, and I'm definitely going to. But this is a pretty definitely above average, pretty definitely solid project here to kind of fuck with. One of the better 2023 projects.